Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us here on episode 5, season 1 of the Standoff with Brad and Sanj here on New Zealand Sport Radio. We're here every Wednesday, as you know, and we're on Facebook Live and throughout the season. And I'm joined by my fellow colleague, Brad Inger. Good evening, Brad.
Good evening, Sanjay, and good evening to our listeners. What an interesting weekend of football with a few blowouts and upsets we had.
Yes, it certainly has been an interesting weekend. Some very, very interesting upsets, as you say. A game of the round in the Eels and the Raiders, a thumping to our lads, and unfortunately, a disappointing end for the Broncos week as well.
Yeah, definitely. As always, we're going to cover all that you need to know in the week that was rugby league, including our top stories of the week, a wrap-up of round 7, preview of round 8, and news on rugby league from around the world, including the women's game. So just tune into your rugby league news. It's time for the top stories of the week.
Yes, and in the top stories this week, obviously, the top stories, basically consist around the New Zealand Warriors again. Players are wanting to come home. There's a little bit of doubt within the team as to what's happening going forward with the senior players. So, it's an interesting one, Brad.
Yes, so I had a little bit of a read of a new article that's just come up. The 3 players in question were David Fusatua, Ignatius Pasi, and Ken Mamalo. Their families have actually had their visas declined, which is causing the issues. So it sounds pretty certain that after the Sharks game in a couple of weeks, they'll be coming home, those 3. And the Warriors have actually started looking at loan players to bring in to replace them on the wings.
Oh, it's interesting that you say that. Yeah, so their visas have not been accepted to enter Australia, and that is the reason why they're coming home. I guess on a positive note, Simon Mannering is to assist in the new coach selection at the Warriors. I guess a lot of people might be asking, why isn't he actually putting his hand up? Does he want a coaching gig? Do you think he could be a good coach, Brad?
It's too early to tell. He's had a little bit of coaching experience in Brisbane. He actually helped with the women's team over there for a little bit last year with Corey Parker. He possibly could. It's too early for a guy like him to get a first grade gig. You could see him maybe coming as an assistant, but I think it was very important to bring a guy like Mannering into the fold for selecting a new coach, because at the moment it's the owners and Cameron George. There's no one with a league background as such there, so they can get a good coach on paper, but if he's actually going to be a good coach on the field, you need one of those experienced footballers to see if they're just blowing smoke or if they actually have the goods.
Yeah, it's becoming less and less interesting, I guess, from a Warriors fan perspective. Even last week, I think I saw on the television there that basically, they still had the support. There were hakas being done, and quite a few Warriors supporters had come out to support the lads over there. But obviously, like this new time under the new coach for the rest of the season, it is really going to be a testing time, and I just don't see too much positivity coming out of the rest of the season for the Warriors. I think it was an even poorer move than I initially first thought to leave Stephen Kearney, or to sack Stephen Kearney so early on in the piece. Now I think it's going to come back to really hamper their season and, dare I say, fans, members for next year, etc., etc. So, yeah, unfortunate times. Let's hope they can turn it around.
Yeah, and they've got a good chance with the team they're facing this week, which leads into our next bit of news, which is Anthony Seibold from the Broncos. There's rumours and questions across the ditch that he's lost the locker room, and the Broncos aren't very happy.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about Anthony Seibold this week. Obviously, he's still coming out and saying that he is the right man for the job. He doesn't have the full respect of the players. They're not adhering to his very difficult style of play, apparently. So, look, we'll cover all of that off in the Broncos' defeat later on. But yeah, I think that during round 7, another key point to note is that plenty of injuries during this round. The faster pace perhaps causing these injuries, Brad.
Yeah, I think it's a big possibility. This quicker pace seems to be putting a lot of pressure on the body, and there's, not including the Warriors before the break, but there was 2 ACLs in the weekend for the Roosters, and everyone seems to be fallen apart, which isn't good for your team, especially with a short season. You lose someone for 2 to 3 weeks. That's a big chunk of this current season. So I'm not sure if it can't be an issue with conditioning because it's happening to every team. And a lot of other teams, there's a lot of teams with good conditioning that have fallen apart. The Roosters, Parramatta. So it could be okay. So I guess we've got to just see if the injuries continue to keep going and keep climbing, and what that means for the end of the season.
Yeah, like you say, the Roosters with 2 ACLs. We'll cover that a little bit later on, but yeah, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the likes of Carey and their hooker as well. They're going to be under immense pressure for, I guess, the back end of this season to see it through, because those are season-ending injuries. And you're right, it's not just them. Most teams are suffering as a result of injuries, from the injuries. Obviously, the Warriors were pre-season, well, not pre-season, but mid-season, I guess you could say, COVID break. So their injuries weren't so much inflicted after the play. But we'll just have to wait and see. And that leads us on to, obviously, the Kangaroos versus All Blacks game that's been talked about heavily this week. And I just think personally, New Zealand Rugby League have come out this week and said that, hey, hang on a minute, why are we trying to encourage a game versus the All Blacks, a Kangaroos game versus the All Blacks? We're New Zealand Rugby League. We need the financial support just as much as any other sporting organisation. We're a league team, they're not. And I have to tend to agree. As very much a league enthusiast, obviously, I mean, everyone would like to see a Kangaroos versus All Blacks game, as a one-off, or as I don't know what you can call it, an exhibition game, perhaps. Yeah, everyone would like to see that, but now is not the right time for that. New Zealand Rugby League is a fairly small, it's not a larger organisation of the leagues around the world, and they're more dire need of Test Rugby League more than anyone, I would say, Brad.
Definitely, I think it would be a great spectacle to watch. But yeah, I think the Kiwis need a bit more love from the Kangaroos. The Kangaroos never seem to want to play the Kiwis. They'll even play a union team instead of the Kiwis. So they need to show them some love. Even if you can't get the Kangaroos, get a Tonga Kiwis game at Eden Park or something. Just have some league. We haven't got to watch any live league here so far this year. So yeah, I think get some Kiwis over, get some Tongans over, Kangaroos, whatever. Just have something happen.
Yeah, I think inevitably they will do something at the back end of the season or early next year. I think it would be good to see international rugby league, or even rugby league for that matter, being played on this side of the Tasman in 2020, because it looks unlikely. But in saying that, let's crack into round 7 on Thursday night. We had the Panthers defeating the Rabbitohs 20 points to 12. Brad, how did you see this one play out, mate?
I thought it was a good game, but Latrell Mitchell unfortunately picked the wrong night to stop his great form that he's had the past couple of weeks. He had 3 errors, a sin bin. Bit of a shocking night. I know there's news that the being away from families negatively affected him, and Wayne Bennett's been working with him quite a bit to try to keep him mentally there. I don't know if it was just a bit too much or just an off night. I'm sure we'll see a better Latrell Mitchell this week, but it's a bit of a shame for him. But on the other side of it, you had Nathan Cleary, who a couple of hours beforehand was stuck in hospital with I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's
cellulitis.
There you go, you got it. Which is some infection, and he was stuck. Looked like he wasn't even going to be playing, and then he came out and had the game of his life. 6 broken tackles, over 100 running meters, steered the Panthers to victory, and made the Panthers look like a very scary team for the rest of this year.
Well, yeah, he's running on the inside of Coruscant as well. And Nathan Cleary, that was the most courageous performances of the season. Probably one of the most courageous performances over the last 5, even 10 years. That was a fantastic game from him. He's owning this football. He's owning this football side. I mean, to be in hospital the day before, with his head swollen, it shows the great character of the young lad, particularly since he had to come out of all of that COVID-19 rubbish, which we discussed, I think, in our first episode, Brad, that it was actually just rubbish, and let him just play the game, hanging out with a couple of girls at a party. I mean, big deal. I mean, at the end of the day, he's starting to prove his worth. And the thing is, he's putting it down to the tutelage of Trent Barrett who he has said that it has been a huge influence on his running game. And if you saw at the weekend how many times Cleary ran at the line when there was an opportunity rather than kicking over the top or looking to pass, I think that he's picking up a thing or two from Barrett, who, of course, was a fantastic ball player, but also a good ball runner. So I think that, he's learning a lot under Trent. And, like you say, this Panthers team is becoming quite lethal. Hey, look, it was a pretty fairly comprehensive win, I thought, even though it's only 20 points to 12. The Rabbitohs never really looked like winning. They had a pretty bad week with good old Bennett out in the media fronting cause for, he has to make a decision that the players know that he's going to be there next year. So they're all sort of making stories up. And I think that a little bit of that pressure perhaps has fallen onto the players.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be tough, but the best teams get through adversity. So it'd just be interesting to see where they are in a couple of weeks. And unfortunately, that leads us into the next game, which was Friday night with the Storm defeating the Warriors 50-6. It's actually the first time since 1931 that a mid-season replacement coach has been kept scoreless at halftime. So pretty brutal game to watch. What were your thoughts on the match?
Yeah, very disappointing watch indeed. Look, it was just going from bad to worse, really, that game. And basically having to watch it was quite painful. I didn't expect it. Like I honestly thought that this Warriors side would have a little bit more pride about their game come Melbourne because of what's happened in recent times, COVID-19, Kearney's sacking, sorry. But the reality is, Payton was actually questioning the bravery of some of the players who are planning to come home. Now that's really disappointing. If your coaches sort of can see that, you're not putting your body on the line because of the potential that you're going to be ending your season short, well, you shouldn't be there in the first place, I feel. And you did mention those players earlier that are planning to come home. Okay, we don't have any idea what kind of emotional impact or what kind of, psychological impact even perhaps it's having on them from being away from their families and basically in isolation. Okay, they can get crowds to their games up there, but it must be tough. But in saying that, I mean, they've had a lot of support. They've chosen to do that. I think that, they should just suck it up and keep going and try and make something of the rest of the season. Try and make eighth spot. I mean, it's tough, but as I saw on the TV earlier, I think in 2009, we beat Melbourne from being eighth, and a famous Michael Witt try on the corner after a Manu Vatuvai break. And I just saw Ivan Cleary celebrating that. It was just on the television a little earlier. So it reminded me of good times, but at the moment they look few and far between, Bradley.
Yeah, I thought they were actually competing quite well for the first 10 minutes. And then once the Storm scored that first try, it might be a bit with what Payton was saying with the bravery. Feel like the moment they had that try go against them, they dropped their heads and they were never back in the match. They had some chances where it looked like it, but they just weren't 100%. And you have to be 100% against the Storm. You can't turn up with your second best and expect to be anywhere close to them. And the Storm had some adversity too. They lost Cameron Munster early in the game. When I saw him go off, I thought we've actually got a shot here. It just wasn't to be. One thing that everyone's been talking about is after the game, Cameron Smith, Ryan Hoffman, and Craig Bellamy went into the sheds and actually spoke to the Warriors team, and we don't know word for word what was said, but I know some fans have come out saying it's quite condescending. I don't think so, knowing that if it was maybe just Cameron Smith, maybe people would say that, but Ryan Hoffman's played with most of those boys. Adam Blair, Tohu Harris, and Blake Green have all played with Cameron Smith, played under Bellamy. So they know them. They have kind of got a mini version of what the Warriors are coming through, with them not allowed to go back to Victoria. So they are kind of understanding a little bit of what the Warriors are going through in a little small part. So I think it was a nice gesture, especially losing Kearney, getting thumped. They can't be feeling that great. So even if it was classed as condescending for some people. I think it was good. The Warriors might be feeling a bit isolated over there at the moment. They don't have as many fans that can show up to the games. So they might need a little pick-me-up from someone, and they lost their father figure in Kearney. So yeah, if Bellamy and that want to talk to him, I think all the clubs are talking to them after the game on the field anyway, just saying thanks for keeping the competition alive. So like you said, it's going to be a long road, but hopefully they can show some fight.
Yeah, I don't know if condescending is the word that I'd use. I mean, like, I just think that if you're Roger Tuivasa-Sheck and, Bellamy, Smith walk in, I mean, how do you feel? Do you feel that it is necessary for them to walk in right now? I mean, it's a bit of a kick in the balls. It's a bit of a low blow. I'm not saying it's condescending. I think it's a great gesture, but I don't know if Warriors seniors would have been taking it like, hey, yeah, look, we really need this. Thank you for coming in, like it was almost a little bit embarrassing, to be fair. I mean, the Storm had just well and truly dumped them, and they've gone into our dressing room and basically given it to us like, hey, look, this is not how you should be playing. You need to pick up your game. You got the support of the fans. You got the support of the other clubs. Come on, lads. I don't know if it's going to make any difference. I just think that it's got to come from within. At the moment, the within is wanting to get on the plane and come home in terms of some players. So it's going to be a long season. Hey, look, on a positive note, they're getting Jack Hetherington on loan from the Panthers. That will certainly, give them a little bit more of a tighter movement around that middle area of the park. And I have to say that, later on this week, the poorest game of the season, I think, perhaps of the last 5 or even maybe 10 years, unfortunately, is going to be the Warriors versus the Broncos. It is a must-watch, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, a bit facetious there, but I think on the money. That leads us to the next game on Friday night, which was the Roosters winning closely, 26-12 over the Dragons. Roosters were hit with injuries and had the class to get the win, but I was surprised by how close it actually was. I was expecting a cricket score.
I wasn't expecting a cricket score in this one. I think, Brad, this Dragons team, after a couple of weeks ago, I said they found their sort of mojo. Ben Hunt, he's coming off and playing a great role in that dummy half region. Dufty having a great game again at the back, second 5'8", like we talked about the other day. So I think that they are starting to play some football how they're meant to play. And just, a little bit of pressure has gone off McGregor and the Dragons over the past couple of weeks because of the results that they've been bringing in. But not just that, when they're losing, they're not losing too badly, I guess you could say. The 18-0 Warriors loss was a bad one, I guess, because they were kept scoreless. I think most people have forgotten about that by now. I think that a repeat of that game now would probably see the Dragons beat us, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think for the Roosters though, Jesus Carey is some player, isn't he? I mean, he's had the most since start of 2019. He's had 67 try assists. That's 15 ahead of the next best half in the competition, plus 71 line break assists. He's the most courageous player in the comp. He runs at the line. He is absolutely amazing, and I think that he's going to be a force to be reckoned with for many years to come. And like I said, it wasn't a bad game from the Dragons. Morris had a blinder as well from the Roosters' perspective, and he just refuses to grow old. That fella, he's just getting better with age. So I guess if his brother was back on his brother's injured on the opposing side, isn't he, Brad?
Yeah, no, they're both playing together now.
All right.
Yeah, but one of the he's injured at the moment, but he should be back soon.
Yeah, and I think obviously when we talk about those ACLs earlier on, two season-ending injuries to Virilis and Radley, of course, in the hooking position there. So it's going to put huge pressure on Jake Friend and Carey for the rest of the season. So there could be a few losses come their way as a result, perhaps, of a depleted hooker and a overworked 5'8", but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the injuries are never good, but they have some good depth at the Roosters, so I think they'll be okay. But yeah, don't think you'll be seeing them go undefeated for the rest of the season after the COVID break. That's for sure.
And that takes us into our first game on Saturday evening. We had the Cowboys up against the Knights, and a shock of the round for me at 32 points to 20. The Cowboys defeating the Knights at Queensland Countryback Stadium in Townsville. I was absolutely shocked to the system this game. I didn't see it coming. a bit of complacency there on behalf of the Knights. I think they've come out and admit that, they've had a few good wins and perhaps they have been a little bit complacent. But yeah, it was definitely a surprise game, Brad.
Yeah, definitely. The Cowboys came out swinging and looked way better than they've looked for basically the past month. When you think what the Warriors did to them a few weeks ago, you would expect the Knights to towel them up, and especially the Knights were behind 26-0, and they did give them a scare. So the Knights showed that they did have what it takes. It wasn't just a complete off night. They had the skill there. They just left it a bit too late, I think. And the Cowboys were just good enough to hold on and get that win. Very much needed as well. They were looking like they were going to end up sitting at the bottom like the rest of us at the moment. But yeah, again, Daniel Safiti had another great night on the losing side. Possibly the Knights were just a bit too complacent. They might have chalked this up as a win already, and we're punished for it, really.
Yeah, Paul Green has come out this week, and he's basically said that it didn't matter who we were going to be playing. We were more committed, we were more amped, and we would have beaten any side on the weekend after the criticism they received in previous weeks. Johnson under the pump, I think, a really pleasing. Oh, sorry, that's the other game. My apologies. Sorry, I forgot to mention that we're now talking about the Dragons. The Seagulls. I'm getting a bit lost here on my news feed here, Brad.
We're still on the Cowboys Knights at the moment.
We're on the Cowboys Knights here. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of pressure. People were asking for Paul Green's head, so it was good to see his team step up and put a performance on to show that they're still playing for him. They got some good players there, and if they can keep putting tough wins like this together, they might actually have a shot at making playoffs.
No, I think I know where I got confused there. Paul Green, correct me if I'm wrong, he's a former Cronulla Shark. And I think that I was looking at Paul Green there, and Sean Johnson just popped in my head because he had such a great game in the weekend for once. And we'll cover him up a little bit later on. But no, Paul Green, yeah. Malolo, McLean, Maguire, the Cowboys forwards just rolled right through their counterparts. And, that enabled their very inexperienced and young spine of Clifford Drinkwater and Hodgson and Hassana, this other chap who's playing his third NRL game at fullback. I don't even know if I'm saying his name correctly. That inexperienced spine, they managed to be the goods on the weekend.
Yeah, they're missing Michael Morgan, but those young players are getting together, and I think we're going to see it a lot more. But they took Ponga out of the game. It used to happen a lot with the Warriors when we first got Roger, where teams are kicking out. Instead of kicking to the fullback, they're kicking for the sidelines, and you completely take the fullback out of the game. And I think watching them dismantle Ponga like that, I think you're going to see a lot more teams do that against the Knights. So the Knights could have some trouble if they can't get Ponga into the game in other ways.
Yeah, and then obviously, they took out Ponga, you say, but that didn't really give much opportunity for Mitchell Pearce to play the planned game that he wanted to. He had a very much, an orchestrated kind of game plan for the Cowboys, and it didn't pay off early on. And he had to go to plan B, and unfortunately, there just wasn't one for Mitchell Pearce on the night. And unfortunately, he was left stranded somewhat. And the Knights went down, and they're pretty disappointed about it. They've come out and said, obviously, Safiti had a interview on the television, basically come out and said, yeah, hey, look, perhaps we were a little bit complacent, but we'll just have to wait and see if they can bounce back. So moving right along, we'll go on to Saturday night's other games, and we had the Broncos up against the Titans, and woohoo, the Broncos getting beaten by younger brother, 30 points to 12. Quite a clubbing, I would say. So, yeah, this one was an interesting game. I did call it a bit of a thumping by younger brother. And, yeah, just an absolute chaos going on at the Broncos at the moment. Darius Boyd has come out. They're in crisis. He has an idea as to what is going on, he believes, but he's not willing to go public. Seabold, he's been rushed to board meetings. His players are not adapting or struggling with this complexity of his play. And, yeah, in press conferences, he's just without answers. So they are under the pump. He still, however, thinks that he's still the right man for the job. And since they've invested so much in him and he's made radical changes, I guess they have to stick with him at least until the end of the season. he's struggling to make the decisions that they need to make. I think Anthony Milford is not performing. Hasn't performed that well over the last couple of seasons. He's a 2015 man of the match, basically, in the grand final. And since then he's even played Origin, but he just needs to perform better if this Brisbane side has any chance of salvaging anything in 2020.
Yeah, it's looking bad. At halftime, they were down 22-0. They were booed off the field by their own fans, which I don't think you could ever say has happened to a Broncos team before. Fans and players or former players have been quite critical of the Broncos laughing after the game. Isaac Luke was targeted. I think he's a bit hard done by. I understand the feeling, because there was a Warriors game a few years back where they got spanked by the Panthers and they were joking around after the game, and it wasn't a good look. But Isaac Luke's been there 5 minutes and he was talking to Sam Lasoni, and they were both basically playing for the Warriors not that long ago, probably the first time they've seen each other. So it's been a bit out of context, but you got to read the room. You're lost 5 in a row now. You can't really be seen. Maybe leave that to after the game.
Maybe leave that one for the dressing rooms, I think, laughing around and goofing around. I mean, it doesn't matter what the situation is. This shouldn't be happening. You can have a laugh and a chuckle after a good win or a close draw or a close win, sorry. When let's say it's a 20-18, both teams have played exceptional football, completion rate is high, error rate is low. Yeah, have a good laugh and a cuddle after that. But, I mean, not when you're just getting dicked and coming out and played like they did against the Titans. That was an embarrassing loss for them. They, I believe, are at the bottom of the ladder, aren't they? So we'll have a look at that a little bit later on. But for the Titans, Ash Taylor, he absolutely just dismantled them. He had one of the best games I'd say he's played in a long time. And on the back of the Titans, achieving 20 completed sets out of 24 in that first half, they were just running rampant. I mean, the forwards really took advantage of the fact that they could run up the middle, and the Broncos forwards were better on paper, but the Titans managed to run 826 meters, Brad.
Yeah, I think honestly it comes down to heart. I think the Titans, they've lost quite a few games this year, but you can't argue with the heart in each performance. They're not giving up like they were last year or the year before. It used to be if you could get 20, 25 points up on them, it was over, no matter what time it was in the game. But now you have to be playing 100%, and they're like you said, they're the younger brother, but their players are playing like their top tier level talent. You can say there's not a lot of top tier talent they've got a handful, but Fortuer, I can't say his name. Their young front rower, he's been a standout. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. He's been a standout for them, and he would be on nowhere near the money that the Haasers and the Fafitas are on. But at the moment, you would probably want him in your side. So I think they're building. It's been a long road for Titans fans, but I think they've got all the pieces of the puzzle and they're just getting it together. And I think in the next year after, I think they could actually be a genuine playoff team.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be good to see them, keep growing to something good. Like, it's a really, it's a similar story to the Warriors, really. Like, hey, look, Gold Coast into the competition as the Tweed Birds first, then the Seagulls, then the Chargers, and now they're the Titans. Back in 1988, Wally Lewis was part of that 88-89 side. After he had his great years at Brisbane, he went down to the coast and laxed out on the beach and played a game of footy on the weekend. Okay, but he was there, and they did have marquee players. They had some really good players back in the day as well, but they were always an underperforming side. I think back in '95 when the ARL and Super League split, they were known as the Chargers, like little Supermen running around. And then after that, of course, they came back as the Titans. Back in 2006, I was actually on the Gold Coast, and that's when I think they came back 2007. Correct me if I'm wrong, but no, since that time they have really struggled again, but I'm starting to see a little bit of hope at the end of the tunnel. This new coach they've got, the group of players, they're developing a nice little culture amongst themselves. They're playing hard, they're playing determined, and I really wish them all the best. And they are one of the teams that I've really enjoyed watching over the last few weeks, Brad.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully the Warriors are taking notes on what to do there. Leads us to our last game on Saturday night, which was the Eels defeating the Raiders 25-24 on Golden Point.
It's a humdinger.
Yeah, it was my favorite match of the week. I thought it was going to be a bit more of a bigger score for the Eels, but the Raiders really really took it to them, and losing Mitchell Moses for the Eels definitely I thought was going to cause trouble. But in the end, it was Clint Gutherson who got the team together, and he got a nice field goal and Golden Point to get them the win. Deserved win, I think. I think they played really well.
Yeah, I thought it was, for me, the game of the round as well. Absolutely great play from Gutherson there, kicking his first drop goal in his career from fullback. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brad. That's his position. And yeah, they were absolutely jubilant on in their victories, weren't they? The middle forwards working hard for Brad Arthur. So, it was a man of the match performance. It's a match of the round performance from both sides. I thought even Ricky's boys, they turned up to play, considering they have been under the pump for their lack of attack over the last few weeks. They definitely stayed in the race in this one, but I guess what will be disappointing from Ricky's perspective is that they want to start winning these kinds of games because they're just losing a little bit of momentum. Canberra, of course, finalists last year, they don't look like that top four side as they did in the early stages of this season. So yeah, obviously with the juggernaut at Parramatta continues to thunder on, but on the other hand, Ricky will be still searching for answers. And I just think that I think there was Moses and Gillard are really just playing out of their skins at the moment as well. I think it was a great game by the 5'8". Paulo, 120 kilos, I believe he is, Brad.
He's a big boy. Great player. He was, I believe, one of the first of Arthur's signings along with Moses. So Arthur knows how to pick out players that maybe wouldn't fit the mold in other places, but he seems to have pieced together a nice little team. And unfortunately, the only problem I had with the game was Ashley Klein, actually. I think Ashley Klein had a horrible night as the ref. He missed a few calls both ways. It wasn't anything that you would say cost a team a game. But with it coming down to one ref now, they need to be on the game all the time because you're watching one guy and picking out any little mistake they make. They're human, they make mistakes, but a game of this magnitude, you want to be on your best. And I know Ricky Stewart came out and said he felt his team was trying too hard. And I think that's part of it. But I think at the moment we've seen with the Raiders that when they get into a tussle, that's when they start to struggle. They've looked good in games when they've been able to get ahead and stay ahead. But against the Eels, against the Roosters and stuff, they, when they get into that nitty gritty, they don't seem to be able to get that next step up to get that win. So that's something Ricky's going to need to be working on, that when it gets into the grind, he needs his team to be there.
Yeah, no, and a little bit. Game was marred with a little bit of emotion there from Corey Horsburgh. I don't know if you saw the big redhead. He basically copped a bit of an injury, but before which he was in tears. The poor bloke, going on some sort of rampage with one of the opposition players. But just shows how passionate he is about the game. And if you could get that out of your player, that kind of emotion, then he's going to give you 120%. But we'll move on to Sunday's fixtures. And on Sunday we had the Sea Eagles going down to the Sharks, and which was potentially another surprise game of the round, another surprise upset of the round. And yeah, definitely, I think people would have had Manly at odds on, considering the track record. Ladies and gentlemen, give you an idea of how bad Manly, the Sharkies have performed against the Sea Eagles. This is only their third win in the last 12 years. One in the last 10 that they've played against. So they are a real bogey side for Man. The Manly are Manly are a really bogey side for the Sharks. And it showed that on the weekend that didn't matter because they had a great game.
Yeah, the Seagulls definitely missed Tom Trbojevic and a few of their other key players, and the Sharks took their chance, as you should. You can't help who's injured on the other side. I thought that without Trbojevic, Seagulls were still going to get the win, but this showed that maybe they're in trouble without him. So he's gone for quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see in the upcoming weeks how they go. But the spine of the Sharks was what impressed me. You got Johnson and Chad Townsend playing well. Johnson had a great game. He's leading the comp now with 10 try assists. But as many Warriors fans know, you need him to be like that every week. He isn't. He's a rocks and diamonds player, but he needs to be a bit more consistent for the Sharks because he can turn a game on his own. And Townsend is a great foil to him. Moylan's been playing well. Brayley, he's just a young hooker, but he's definitely fitting into that spine nicely. Jesse Ramian played well. The Sharks were great all over the park. And yeah, they just need that consistency.
Yeah, I think Blake Bray had the best game he's had for the club. He had an absolute blinder on the weekend. I mean, it was that 25-minute mark, wasn't it, when Adam Fanua-Blake went off between the 25th and 56th minute mark when, they just, Talakai Rudolph, they just basically monstered by Fafita. Fafita monstered them, and it was just an unbelievable barrage through up the middle, and they had no answer to that. And Manly were just depleted after that, and there was no coming back, unfortunately. Yeah, Sean Johnson had a great game. He felt controlled. He felt rhythmical. He's come out and outwardly said he's not where he wants to be. He wants to get into that balanced direction heading into the latter end of the season, and he wants to play more in the moment. There was a couple of errors he admitted that he made on the weekend that he could have done something different. So I think that's good to hear that he wants to play in the moment and that he wants to get better, because he certainly has had a poor start. Probably one of his best games in a Sharks jersey. Don't know if it was, you could say it was a fantastic performance, but he certainly is getting better and better. And he's playing, he's giving some big accolades to John Morris, the coach, who has been under all sorts of pressure over previous weeks. I mean, a lot said about the club, a lot said about him, a lot said about Johnson. And that was a good win for the Sharkies, and they'll give them a lot of confidence going into the coming rounds.
Definitely. He's Johnson's a confidence player, so keep him confident and they're going to be in the hunt. Which that leads us into the last game of the round, which was the Tigers beating the Bulldogs 34-6. It's tough being a Bulldogs fan at the moment, and you got to wonder how much longer Dean Pay's going to have at the club. He's actually off contract at the end of the year, and I think if they keep going the way they are, he won't be there next year. It was also the 500th match for the Tigers since they merged with Western Suburbs in 2000, and it was Michael Maguire's 100th victory since returning to the NRL in 2012. So Maguire's approach of picking young players at the club seems to be working. Harry Grant, I think he's second at the moment in the Dally M tallies, and he's a rookie. Unfortunately, he's a lone player from the Storm, so the Storm might get to go back and have 3 great hookers at their club.
They really want him back right now after what's happening down there.
Yeah, for sure. But I thought it was a good game. I just feel sorry for the Bulldogs. What was your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I thought, I think that it was a good game from the Tigers. Maguire, he has made some radical changes since coming to the club. But a lot of people are happy with, Maguire. He's obviously the Kiwis captain, a Kiwis coach. He sets standards, he works hard, and he makes big calls. He drops players if he needs to be. He picked up Josh Reynolds, of course. And he's taken the likes of Benji Marshall out of the side in recent times, as you would have noticed. And because they're doing so well, where does that leave Benji? He's not able to make the first grade side run on side at the moment. He's the Kiwis captain. I think that says a lot as well. It's been his defense. Unfortunately, he's got the most missed tackles out of any player, apparently, by quite some margin, and that's why he's not been looked at in recent times. So maybe he needs to go away and work on that. Also, I think maybe it's time that Benji sort of realizes, a permanent positional change he played hooker at Brisbane a couple of seasons ago, and I actually didn't think he played too badly or looked too badly there. But again, that's not a decision for myself to make. I think that the running 5'8", there's a lot more, room between a 5'8" and the ball runners, such as the forwards, and that's when you're going to be really tested on that edge of the ruck in terms of defending. And maybe if he's playing at the ruck where there's not so much momentum gathered, he might be a better defensive player. But I don't know if you can mold your side around Benji's defenses. I just think that, he's going to really struggle to sort of get back in the side.
Yeah, and I think, there's be great to have him out there, but who would you drop? There's Harry Grant's playing great. Reynolds is playing good. You can't drop someone that's playing well to bring in someone just because of who they are.
Benji Marshall.
Yeah, I know his manager's been shopping him around to other clubs, but Maguire still wants him at the Tigers. Benji doesn't want to leave. It's just the manager giving him options, basically. I don't think he'll leave. I think he's gone away but Tigers, he's a Tiger through and through. I think he wants to end his career there. This might be his last year. He might go another year. We're not sure. But yeah, his defense lets him down. And at the moment, you can't afford to have bad defense because of how quick the game is. So I understand Maguire's made a tough choice there, but it seems to be working. So
yeah, there's only one other club that I can see Benji ending up at. Brad, do you know what club I'm thinking about?
It's unfortunate. It would be the Warriors. I think that's
the Kiwis love to come. The Kiwis love to come home after playing their guts out and playing their best footy for another club. Let's go and retire at the Vodafone Warriors. But hey, that was the round that was, ladies and gentlemen, round 7. And if we go back now, we're going to have a look at our picks for the week. And I'm happy to say that I have managed to get one up on Bradley this week at 6 out of 8, having picked the Titans to beat the Broncos. So, yeah, we're at level peggings now, ladies and gentlemen, after round 7. I'm at 20 from 32, and as is Brad. Brad must be sad after going down in that battle.
It's unfortunate. The Broncos let me down, which I think is what all their fans are saying right now as well. So, yeah, I'll come back. It'll be fine.
Take a look at the ladder there. Yep, we've got.
So there we go.
Yes, so obviously at the top of the ladder, we've got the Eels and the Panthers. Roosters in 3rd, Storm in 4th. If you have a look at those 4 teams, though, they're pretty much the front runners, and that's your top 4. They're one game ahead of everyone else in that bottom tier. Surprisingly enough, the bottom 8 is made up. The bottom, the 5th through to 8th is made up of teams that have all won 4 games. So there's always going to be those teams around the ruck, Brad, that are always going to be champing at the bit. And I have to agree now that the Rabbitohs, they're starting to not fall away from the pace, but I did have big hopes and expectations for them. But I see them a team in that bottom 4 rather than that top 4 at the moment.
Yeah, I think the Rabbitohs aren't going to be a top 4 side, but they're still in the running for 8. You could even see the likes of the Seagulls and the Raiders drop out, and the Rabbitohs and the Sharks or even the Cowboys go up. The Dragons, as you can see at 12th, aren't actually that far off the pace anymore. Titans could have classic up, but I think Warriors, Broncos, and Bulldogs, unfortunately, are probably going to be swapping their positions at the bottom and probably going to stay down there for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think so. I think that you're right. The Dragons and the Titans there, I'm surprised the Titans are still only 2 wins after how they've been playing. So, to realize that the kind of football they've been playing and to only have 2 wins, they're an okay side. And I think that they could, they could definitely challenge that 8th spot, 7th spot potentially. Obviously, they've got the Sharks, Cowboys, and Rabbitohs in front of them. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But ladies and gentlemen, that's the table for the week. Eels on top and the Bulldogs in last place.
Yeah, but that will lead us into our viewer questions. Paul, are there any questions from the viewers at the moment?
We've had plenty of comments, but very few questions, really. Some talk about Super League, but I guess we'll get onto that later. on that looks like they've got a date for it to be back, and they've done well to get the Storm out of Melbourne because apparently the AFL is struggling to do that. So timing there, I think, was key that they had an away game, didn't they? So which meant that they went out of town, and it's just boys, quickly head down the shops, buy yourselves another set of clothes because you're not going home for a week. But yes, I think that was that's all we have from the chat this week.
No worries.
Quick and easy.
We'll crack into the round 8 picks in that case. So obviously, like, we've got round 8 coming up on the weekend, Brad, and on Thursday night we've got the Storm versus the Roosters. How do you see this one?
Yeah, so I've actually backed the Roosters. They're paying $1.50 compared to the Storm's $2.55. Storm are a good team, but I think the Roosters, they're still the team to beat. So I can't look past them, unfortunately.
Yeah, likewise, even though they've got a few injury concerns over there, like you said, they've got depth. So, yeah, I also see the Roosters taking this one out. It'll be close, though. You know, this Storm side is starting to play some good football. They had a couple of hiccups early, lost to the Panthers, etc. But they're going to be thereabouts. But it'll be a tight tussle. But I'm backing the Roosters to run away with it, which leads us into Friday night's game, which is the Raiders versus the Dragons. Clearly, the Dragons, whilst they've been playing really good football, I think that the Raiders will have an opportunity to perhaps redeem themselves for the losses over the last couple of weeks, and I see them coming away with the Drags on this one, Brad.
Yeah, I think so. Like you said, the Dragons have been playing some good football as of late, but I think the Raiders are going to come away with a win here. They're heavily favoured on TAB as well, $1.22 to $4.25. But yeah, I'm penciling down the green machine for a win there, and that leads us to the next game on Friday, which is the Eels paying $1.26 against the Cowboys paying $3.85. Who have you got on this one?
Yeah, I'm going the Eels. Look, the Cowboys, whilst they made a bit of noise last week and they beat, they had a good game. I don't think that it was going to be, being something that they're going to be able to do against the Eels this week, because the Eels have been playing some great football. I think they're 5 from 6, having only lost they've lost the 2 games now. So, yeah, it's going to be a pretty one-sided affair, I think, in terms of the result. I don't know if it'll be the scoreline will be that huge, but I think that the Eels will win comfortably.
Yeah, definitely. Same here. I've got the Eels. Cowboys, yeah, they're showing some form, but the Eels are just red hot at the moment.
And that leads us into Sunday's game, which is very interesting, actually. The Titans versus the Sharks. And I've got an opportunity to be different from you in the picks, and this was probably where I was going to look at, but I still think that after the Sharkies win on the weekend, that they will actually be ahead of the Titans. I think that they've got a slightly faster brand of football. I think Johnson combination working with Townsend is a little bit better than Ash Taylor at the moment. So I think it'll be a close game, though. I really do. I think that those odds of $2.70 for the Titans and $1.47, I don't think that's really a true reflection. I'd be more, I don't know, $1.65 on the Sharks, maybe at $2.20 on the Titans, something like that. But yeah, the bookies have the Titans losing comfortably, I suppose. But I definitely see it being as a tight tussle, Brad.
Yeah, I think so. I'm edging on the Shark side as well. It will be a tough tussle. I think it'll be a good game to watch. But if the Sharks play like they did in the weekend, with their spine there, I think they're just going to have just better side on the field. So they're going to have to come away with the win. But the Titans will make them work for it, that's for sure.
And that leads us into Saturday's other fixtures. Sorry, Saturday's other games. And that obviously we've got the Warriors versus the Broncos at Central Coast Stadium. Warriors paying $2.35. I can't believe it. The Broncos are tipped odds-on favourites at $1.60, and it's going to be a scary game for Warriors supporters.
Definitely, I've actually gone with the Warriors in this one. You could flip a coin. Both teams are going through some tough times, but I think the Warriors, they've lost Roger. Roger didn't succeed in getting his shoulder charge ban removed, so he's gone for the week. Peter Hiku's gone to fullback, with Jared Beale going into the centres, which it's a bit of a loss, but Peter Hiku plays all right at fullback when he has to go in, so I think they're not losing too much. Obviously, losing Roger is a big thing, but Peter Hiku has shown he can deliver there. Having Fuss and Ken on the wings, I think, is going to help them score the tries. It's just about them stopping the tries, which has been their concern. But I don't know if the Broncos have got what it takes at the moment to beat anyone. So I can't pick them, and they screwed my picks last week, so I can't go with them this week.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm only going for the Warriors, I feel, because I'm a Warriors supporter. Let's just leave it at that. I don't think can say anything more. They'll probably lose, unfortunately. But hey, look, I'm supporting them. I'm backing them in. But the writing is on the wall. Most of the Australian media do think as well that the Broncos will come back and beat the Warriors. And if the bookies think it as well, then hey, it could be. But we'll just have to wait and see. The other Saturday night game is the Tigers versus the Panthers. Tigers, even though they're having some good performances, they're coming up against a red hot Panthers side, who I think will take away the game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Panthers have got themselves in some good form, so I think it's going to take a really good team to put them down. And Tigers are showing some glimpses, but they're not there yet.
Yeah, so now that should be a pretty straightforward victory, I'd imagine, for Nathan Cleary and the boys. Leads us into Sunday's games: Sea Eagles versus the Knights. Sea Eagles basically paying $1.90, as are the Knights. I was tempted to go the Sea Eagles on this one, but after last week's performance and how they got beat up the middle, injury concerns, Travojevic out, I am backing in the Knights to come back, particularly after they had a disappointing loss. And I think that they will want to get their season back on track how it was prior to last week.
Yeah, I'm backing the Knights as well. I think Travojevic is a bigger loss than I thought it was going to be. And the Knights will be looking to make up for what happened last week, and they'll have a good game. Should be close though, but yeah, got to go with the Knights. And that leads us into the last game of the round, which is the Bulldogs paying $4 against the Rabbitohs paying $1.25. Bulldogs seem to love getting Sunday night games now, but you'd be crazy to pick them, so I'm going with the Rabbitohs. What about you?
I think the Rabbitohs will they'll still be too strong for the likes of the Bulldogs, I feel. Bulldogs, you got Foran playing well, and you got a few others here and there, but at the end of the day, I still think that they're very inexperienced, and they're on the end of a hiding to nothing really for the rest of the season, particularly since the lack of depth in their squad. So yeah, I'm picking the Rabbits, which basically has us picking the same teams throughout the round. So there will be no surprises next week in terms of points for and against. We will be at level picking. But yeah, that's our round 8 picks. Head on now to what's happening overseas in the Super League. They're set to resume on the 2nd of August, I understand. A shortened competition to 22 rounds. A revised playoff structure. Only top 4 teams, Brad. So that's quite interesting.
It is. They're just trying to. They've got to do something to shorten the season so they don't run too far into next year and affect next season. So taking it down to 4 teams is a good idea. It shortens the playoffs quite a bit. And generally speaking, it's generally the top 4 teams that go through anyway. And they've penciled in the grand final to be played in the last weekend of November. So they're not going to have a big break before the next season starts, especially for those guys coming from the Super League coming back to the NRL. But at least they'll get it done this year, and it'll be good to see them come back.
Yeah, and there's on the women's front, there's no indication of any further news at this stage, but we'll keep you updated on that. And that brings us to the conclusion of episode 5, season 1 of the Standoff here on New Zealand Sport Radio's latest show of rugby league, with your hosts Sanjay and Brad.
And for your weekly update on rugby league, tune into our podcast on iHeartRadio or Facebook. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.